Hello? Oh, welcome back. I'm the Spartan Atheist. Today we're gonna have a little fun. We're gonna go down a little pathway that I went down way back in my early days when I became, an atheist. And kind of starts like this. So we're gonna start off with a little riddle. See if you can figure out who I'm thinking of. This man is a mythological character. We tell small children that they need to be good because this character can see them when they're awake or asleep. We tell them that if they're good, there's going to be a reward. But if they're bad, they're going to get, something a little better suited for trips to the burn ward. Who am I thinking of? Jesus, of course! The omnipotent God of the universe sees you always, knows all your thoughts and dreams, and gives you heaven if you're good, but, if you're bad, it's going to get a little hot. Why? Did you think I was talking about this guy? Okay, yeah, I suppose that's also true. But if you think that I just listed the similarities between the two, to joke about it, let me tell you, we're just getting started. So first, a bit of a backstory. Back when I was in college was about the time that I first started challenging my religiosity, and one of the ways that this happened was the invention of this joke, which I've sort of let you in on now. The idea that what's the difference between Santa Claus and Jesus, and one, punishes you for doing bad and rewards you for doing good, and the other one's a fat man in a red suit. And I know I'm not a comedian, so, you don't have to laugh at that. But the point is that even at that young age, I realized that there's sort of a tie-in between the ideas of an invincible entity that watched you and rewarded you or punished you based on your ethical behavior. And come on, you expect me not to make fun of that shit? It's like when you watch Monty Python and they name a character Biggest Dickus. For fuck's sake, you gotta make fun of that shit. And yeah, I was making fun of Jesus and Santa Claus because they were the same thing. They seemed to be exactly the same thing. But I was more right than I would even ever know. For one thing, have you ever noticed that December 25th is just pulled out of somebody's ass? Supposedly we know that, Santa Claus is a made-up character, and that, all the details of his life are just co-opted from Christianity. But the Bible is literally just the same thing. It's co-opted from early pagan holidays. Christmas is just the stolen holiday of Saturnalia. And it doesn't end there. Christmas trees, a favorite of the faithful worldwide, and, a major holiday industry, is not only a pagan tradition, it's actually expressly forbidden in the Bible. Early church officials, this is how forbidden it was. Early church officials were so pissed that when their followers did the Christmas tree thing because it was blasphemous that they, rained all sorts of punishments on people. But now everybody's expected to do it. There's gift giving, there's Yule logs, there's caroling, there's mistletoe, there's holly wreaths, wassail, the colors green and red, burning candles during that time of the year. They all had rich pagan traditions that predated Christianity. Honestly, if we took out all the pagan traditions, Christianity doesn't even have a date to celebrate Christmas. And maybe you're a Christian and you're just saying, well, yeah, Spartan Atheist, whatever, we know all that. But it's still a celebration about our real God, Jesus. Well, yeah, except it only gets worse. You see, just like Santa, the story of Jesus began with a variety of, varying and incompatible versions. That's important. They were incomplete, different, borrowed, and they often had, nothing to do with each other. Santa was a fat or thin guy. He was red or green, that's a big deal. But he was cheery or he was grumpy. Some of the early Santa Clauses, he was a real a-hole. Was he a safe guy, or was he supposed to be feared? Was he like a local guy, or was he regional, or, is this a worldwide phenomenon? Did he have horses, or did he have reindeer? Some of these earliest things were not settled in the Santa Claus story. Jesus, also, in the early history, well, maybe he was human and then he was like baptized to become the prophet, or maybe he was a demigod, or maybe he was actually God himself. Maybe he was chosen before birth and foretold. Maybe he was chosen, at the baptism in adulthood. Maybe he came to earth to fight, or maybe he fought in the realms, of heaven, going from one of the levels of heaven down to hell and then back up to heaven. Maybe what his job was to kick Old Testament God's ass because Old Testament God was a dickhead, or maybe he was the son of Old Testament God. None of these things were settled in the early church, just like none of these things were settled in the early Santa Claus history. The early days, it was the Wild West of crazy ideas, and only later did they say, okay, here's the official version. And when did they do that? Well, specifically, they did it when the story was packaged and sold at a specific time, and then retroactively applied to history. In other words, they rewrote the history books. For Santa Claus, it was the Coca-Cola marketing. And for Jesus, it was the Council of Nicaea. Once Coca-Cola made Santa a fat man in a red suit that rode behind reindeer, that became, quote, canon, and all the other earlier versions were sort of rewritten. And for Jesus, once the Council of Nicaea said, no, here's the deal and here's what we believe, all the other older books that were different, they got burnt, and people that believed in them, they got kicked out of the church. All the older versions became wrong. So what I'm pointing out here is that Jesus and Santa Claus share very similar patterns of the evolution of the story, which is a strong indicator that they're both made up. But I'm still missing what I consider to be the most interesting comparison between the two, and the most important one when it comes to faith. You see, when push comes to shove, many Christians say that despite not having a silver bullet to believe, they feel Jesus in their lives. And this is where the Santa Claus comparison is complete. When I was a kid, I could feel the presence of Santa Claus when I walked into the room full of freshly stacked presents. In a room that maybe I'd just walked through moments before, suddenly there was very real, very tangible proof that the magical and wonderful gift giver Santa Claus had just passed through that very room, and his presence was palpable. I could feel the slight movement of the air left over from his hasty departure. I could see where he must have just stepped as he laid the presents down around the tree. And I could smell the difference in the atmosphere from his traveling clothes. He was here. I could feel it. I knew it. Yet, obviously, as it turns out, I was completely wrong. Santa Claus is fake. My parents were sneaking the presents into the room. And yet, I was convinced that I felt the presence of Santa Claus. I would have sworn on a stack of Bibles that Santa Claus was real, because I felt it. His presence was undeniable to me. It was as real as rain. It was, as real as, I guess, any other kid that had ever been raised in a Santa household. But despite me believing I really, really felt the presence of Santa Claus, we know that he's not real. He's not really there because he never existed. And anyone that's ever believed in Santa Claus has a personal example of when they thought they could feel the presence of someone that doesn't exist. Now, we humans, we have dumb brains. We are susceptible to believing in fake things so much that when we believe, we can sense them. If you tell me you've had a personal experience with Jesus, I'll ask you why your experience with Jesus was any better than my experience with Santa Claus. For that matter, how is it better than your experience with Santa Claus? How are you sure that you're not tricking yourself? How do you know that you don't just believe in an adult version of Santa? And if your beliefs are just based on an adult Santa, maybe you should reflect on your beliefs and ponder if they are real. Thus endeth the lesson.